Connor Mitchell had not been on a date in 12 years. As a black single father, he believed some doors once closed should stay that way. But when his coworker insisted on setting him up, he agreed just to end the conversation. Now, sitting across from the woman at the small restaurant, something shifted. The way she tilted her head, the way her smile started slow before spreading wide. Then she mentioned a coffee shop in Chicago, a place where she once studied with someone special. His breath caught. He knew that place. He had been that someone. Kaisa Johnson. The night before the blind date, Connor stood at the kitchen counter chopping vegetables while Marcus sat at the table doing homework. Their small house in Baltimore was modest, but clean, every corner reflecting the discipline Connor had built his life around. 12 years of raising a son alone had taught him that routine was everything. Dinner at 6, homework by 8, no chaos, no surprises. Marcus looked up from his textbook. "So you're really going tomorrow?" Connor kept his eyes on the cutting board. "I told Ray I'd show up, that's all." "That's all?" Marcus repeated, a hint of amusement in his voice. At 15, he had developed a way of seeing through his father that Connor found both impressive and irritating. "It's one dinner," Connor said. "I'll be polite, make conversation, and come home. Nothing more." Marcus closed his book and leaned back in his chair. "Dad, when's the last time you went out with someone? And I don't mean grabbing coffee with the guys from work." Connor scraped the vegetables into a pan. The oil sizzled. "I go out plenty. You go to work, you come home, you watch me play basketball. That's not a life, Dad. That's a schedule." The words landed harder than Marcus probably intended. Connor turned to face his son, ready to defend himself, but something in the boy's expression stopped him. It wasn't judgment. It was worry. "I'm fine," Connor said softer now. Marcus shook his head slowly. "You know what I remember about Mom?" Connor's jaw tightened. They rarely talked about Denise. She had left when Marcus was 3, chasing something she claimed she couldn't find in their marriage. Connor had spent years trying to fill both roles, and somewhere along the way he had convinced himself that his own happiness was a luxury he couldn't afford. "I remember nothing," Marcus continued. "I was too young, but I remember you. I remember you staying up all night when I was sick. I remember you teaching me to ride a bike in the parking lot because we didn't have a yard. I remember everything you gave up for me." Connor turned back to the stove, stirring the vegetables more than necessary. "Dad, you don't have to sacrifice your whole life for me. I don't need that. I need you to be happy." The words hung in the air between them. Connor wanted to argue to explain that being a father was enough, that he had made peace with his choices. But the truth was more complicated. He had built walls so high that he had forgotten what it felt like to let anyone in. "It's just one dinner," he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus smiled a small victory. "Then make it count." The restaurant was a quiet Italian place on the edge of downtown, the kind with dim lighting and candles on every table. Connor arrived 15 minutes early because that was who he was. He ordered water and waited, his leg bouncing under the table. He hadn't been nervous about anything in years. He managed construction crews, handled deadlines, solved problems that would make most people quit. But sitting in this restaurant waiting for a woman he had never met, he felt like a teenager again. Ray had shown him a photo, but it was blurry and small. "She's a psychologist," Ray had said. "Smart kind, been through some stuff. Lost her husband a few years back. I think you two might understand each other." Connor had agreed mostly to get Ray off his back. His coworker had been pushing him to date for months, claiming that no man should spend his best years alone. Connor didn't see it that way. He saw his years as dedicated, purposeful, focused on the one person who truly mattered. But Marcus's words from the night before kept echoing in his mind. "You don't have to sacrifice your whole life for me." The door opened, and a woman walked in. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. There was something calm about her, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. She scanned the room, and when her eyes found Connor, She smiled. He stood as she approached the table. "Connor," she asked. "That's me. You must be Kaisa." They shook hands, and she sat across from him. Up close, he noticed the depth in her eyes, the kind that came from having seen too much and survived anyway. "I have to admit," Kaisa said, "I almost canceled 3 times." Connor let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "That makes 2 of us." She laughed, and something about the sound felt familiar, like a song he had heard long ago but couldn't quite place. They ordered food and talked about safe things at first. Work, the city, the weather. Kaisa was a trauma psychologist specializing in grief and loss. Connor told her about construction, about the satisfaction of watching buildings rise from nothing. "There's something beautiful about creating things," Kaisa said, "starting with empty space and ending with something real, something that lasts." Connor nodded. "I used to want to be an architect, design the buildings, not just build them." What happened? The question was simple, but it opened a door Connor usually kept locked. Life happened. Family needed me. I had to make choices. Kaisa's expression softened. "I understand that more than you know." As the evening went on, Connor found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't expected. Kaisa didn't push or pry. She listened in a way that made him feel heard, and when she shared pieces of her own story, there was no self-pity, just honesty. She told him about her husband David, who had passed away 5 years ago from cancer. She told him about the years of learning to live alone again, about the work that saved her and the friends who refused to let her disappear. "My best friend practically dragged me here tonight," Kaisa admitted. "She said I couldn't live like a widow forever." Connor smiled. "My son said something similar. Told me I needed to stop living like a schedule." Smart kid. Too smart for his own good. They shared a moment of understanding, 2 people who had learned to carry their pain quietly and were only now considering what it might mean to set some of it down. Then Kaisa mentioned Chicago. "I went to college there," she said. "Sometimes I still think about this little coffee shop near campus. I used to study there with someone. We'd sit for hours talking about everything and nothing." Connor's hand froze around his glass. "It had these old wooden tables," Kaisa continued, "and the owner would let us stay past closing because we always bought too many pastries." His heart began to pound. He knew that shop. He knew those tables. He knew the owner, an elderly man named George, who called everyone kid, regardless of their age. "The funny thing is," Kaisa said, looking down at her plate, "I haven't thought about that place in years. But sitting here with you, it just came back to me." Connor stared at her, really looked at her, the way she tilted her head when she listened, the way her smile started small before spreading wide. The way she spoke about loss like it was a companion she had learned to walk beside. 20 years fell away in an instant. "Kaisa," he said, his voice rough. "Kaisa Johnson." Her eyes widened. She studied his face, searching for something she had buried long ago. Connor Mitchell. Neither of them moved. The restaurant continued around them, conversations and clinking glasses and soft music, but they existed in a separate space, a pocket of time where the past and present collided. "I didn't recognize you," Kaisa whispered. "You look so different, but also exactly the same." Connor couldn't speak. The woman sitting across from him was his first love. The one who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. The one who had vanished without explanation, leaving him with questions he had never been able to answer. 20 years of wondering why he wasn't enough. 20 years of building walls to protect himself from ever feeling that kind of abandonment again. And now she was here in a restaurant in Baltimore on a blind date that fate had apparently orchestrated without consulting either of them. Kaisa reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of his hand. "Can we pretend?" she asked quietly. "Just for tonight. Can we pretend this is the first time we're meeting?" Connor understood what she was offering. A chance to know each other as the people they had become, not the ghosts of who they used to be. A chance to start fresh without the weight of everything that had gone wrong. He nodded slowly. Okay. But that night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, Connor knew the truth. The past wasn't dead. It had just been waiting. And now, it was very much alive. A week passed before they saw each other again. Connor had spent those 7 days trying to convince himself that the blind date was a strange coincidence, nothing more. He went to work, came home, made dinner for Marcus, and pretended that everything was normal. But at night, when the house was quiet, the memories returned uninvited. Kaisa, at 19, laughing in that coffee shop. Kaisa holding his hand as they walked through campus. Kaisa telling him she believed he would do something extraordinary with his life. And then Kaisa gone without warning, without explanation, leaving him with a wound that had never fully healed. When she texted asking if he wanted to meet at the park near his house, he almost said no. Almost. But something stronger than fear made him type yes. They walked along the path that circled the small lake, autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the ground. "I thought about calling sooner," Kaisa said, "but I didn't know what to say." Connor kept his eyes on the path ahead. "I know what you mean." They walked in silence for a while, and Connor noticed something strange. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt natural, like a conversation that didn't need words. "Tell me about your work," Kaisa said eventually. "Not the facts. Tell me what it feels like." No one had ever asked him that before. People asked about projects, timelines, budgets. They didn't ask about feelings. "It feels like solving puzzles," Connor said slowly. "Every building starts as a problem. How do you take this empty space and turn it into something that serves a purpose? How do you make it strong enough to last? I like finding those answers." Kaisa nodded. "That's what I love about psychology, too. People come to me broken, and my job is to help them find the pieces they thought they'd lost." "Do they ever find them all?" Kaisa considered the question carefully. "Not always. Sometimes the pieces are gone forever. But they learn to build something new with what remains." Connor understood that more than she knew. He had spent years building a life from broken pieces, creating stability for Marcus out of the chaos Denise had left behind. "Can I ask you something?" Kaisa said. "Go ahead." "Your son. You mentioned him at dinner. What's he like?" Connor felt the familiar tension rise in his chest. He had kept Marcus separate from every other part of his life, protecting him from disappointment, from attachment, from loss. "He's 15, Connor said carefully. "Smart, plays basketball, sees through everything I try to hide." Kaisa smiled. "Sounds like he takes after his father. He's better than me, braver." They reached a bench overlooking the lake and sat down. A family of ducks glided across the water, leaving ripples in their wake. "I'd like to meet him someday," Kaisa said quietly. "If that's okay." Connor didn't answer. He wanted to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. Meeting Marcus meant something real, something that could lead to attachment and expectation, and eventually, inevitably, to loss. Kaisa seemed to sense his hesitation. "There's no rush. I just wanted you to know." 2 weeks later, the decision was made for him. Connor and Kaisa were sitting at a coffee shop a few blocks from his house, sharing a quiet Saturday afternoon. They had fallen into a rhythm of seeing each other once or twice a week, conversations that ranged from childhood memories to present-day struggles, always circling around the past they had agreed not to discuss. The door opened, and Connor looked up to see Marcus walking in with 2 friends. His son spotted him immediately, and their eyes met across the room. There was no escape. Marcus said something to his friends, then walked over to the table. His expression was curious, but guarded the look of someone gathering information before making a judgment. "Hey, Dad." Connor stood up feeling suddenly exposed. "Marcus, I didn't know you'd be here. We were just grabbing drinks before practice. Marcus's eyes shifted to Kaisa. Hi. Kaisa smiled warmly and extended her hand. I'm Kaisa. It's nice to meet you. Marcus shook her hand, his gaze lingering on her face. You too. An awkward silence followed. Connor searched for something to say, but words failed him. I should get back to my friends, Marcus said finally. Nice meeting you, Kaisa. He nodded at his father. See you at home, Dad. Connor watched him walk away, his heart pounding. He sat back down, avoiding Kaisa's eyes. He has your eyes, Kaisa said gently. The way he looks at people, like he's seeing everything they're trying to hide. Connor stared at his coffee cup. He'll ask questions tonight. Is that a bad thing? He didn't know how to answer. That evening, Marcus found Connor in the living room, pretending to read a book he hadn't turned a page of in 20 minutes. So, Marcus said, dropping onto the couch across from him. How long have you known her? Connor set the book aside. He had never lied to his son, and he wasn't going to start now. We knew each other in college, 20 years ago. We just reconnected. Marcus raised an eyebrow. 20 years, and you just happened to meet again. Blind date, neither of us knew. His son processed this information, turning it over in his mind. That's either the weirdest coincidence ever or the universe is trying to tell you something. Connor almost smiled. Which do you think it is? Marcus leaned back, studying his father with that unnerving perception. I think she looks at you like you're someone important, and I think you look at her like you're afraid she'll disappear. The observation cut deeper than Marcus could have known. Connor felt the old wound pulse beneath the surface, the fear he had carried for 2 decades. It's complicated, Connor said. Marcus stood up and headed toward the stairs. Before he left, he turned back. Dad, whatever happened between you two back then, maybe it doesn't have to matter anymore. Maybe you can just focus on now. He disappeared upstairs, leaving Connor alone with words that echoed long into the night. 3 weeks after their reunion, Kaisa called Connor at 11 in the evening. He was sitting in the kitchen, unable to sleep, when his phone lit up with her name. Something in his chest tightened as he answered. Kaisa, is everything okay? Her voice was steady but carried an unfamiliar weight. Can you come outside? I'm parked in front of your house. I need to tell you something. Connor found her sitting on his front steps, her coat wrapped tightly around her against the cold November air. He sat down beside her, close enough to feel her presence but not touching. I can't keep pretending, Kaisa said, her eyes fixed on the empty street. You deserve to know the truth. Connor's throat went dry. The truth about what? Kaisa took a deep breath. About why I left. 20 years of silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Connor had imagined this moment countless times, had rehearsed what he would say, what he would feel. But now that it was here, he could only wait. When we were together in Chicago, Kaisa began, I knew something was wrong. You stopped sleeping. You'd get phone calls in the middle of the night and pretend everything was fine. I heard you crying once when you thought I was asleep. Connor remembered those days. His mother's illness, his sister only 12 years old trying to hold things together alone. The impossible choice that loomed over him like a shadow. I asked your roommate, Kaisa continued. He told me about your mother, about how sick she was, about how your sister needed you. Connor's hands curled into fists. Why didn't you say anything? Because I knew what would happen. You would have stayed for me. You would have let your family fall apart because you loved me, and eventually you would have hated me for it. She turned to face him, and he saw tears glistening in her eyes. So I made a choice. I ended things. I cut off all contact. I disappeared so you wouldn't have to choose between loving me and being the man your family needed. The words hit Connor like a physical blow. All those years of believing he wasn't enough, that she had left because he was lacking something essential. All those years of building walls to protect himself from rejection. "I thought I was doing the right thing," Kaisa whispered. "I thought I was protecting you, but I took away your choice. I decided for both of us without ever asking what you wanted." Connor's voice came out rough, barely recognizable. "Do you know what I believed for 20 years? Kaisa shook her head, tears falling now. "I believed I wasn't good enough, that you looked at me and saw someone who would never amount to anything. That's the story I told myself every time someone got close. It's why my marriage failed. It's why I stopped letting anyone in." Kaisa reached for his hand, and this time he let her take it. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I thought I was saving you. I didn't know I was breaking you." They sat together in the darkness, two people confronting the wreckage of a decision made with good intentions and terrible consequences. "What do we do now?" Connor asked. Kaisa squeezed his hand. "I don't know, but I'm tired of running from this. Whatever happens next, I want it to be honest." Connor nodded slowly. Honest. It was such a simple word for something so difficult. The days that followed were harder than Connor had expected. Knowing the truth didn't erase the pain. If anything, it transformed it into something more complex. He wasn't angry at Kaisa, not exactly. But he grieved for the years they had lost for the man he might have become if he hadn't spent 2 decades believing he was unworthy of love. They continued to see each other, but something had shifted. The easy rhythm of their conversations gave way to longer silences, heavier questions. "Do you think we can get past this?" Kaisa asked one afternoon as they sat in her living room. Connor stared at the wall, searching for an answer he didn't have. "I don't know. I want to. But I don't know if wanting is enough." The question that haunted him wasn't whether he still loved her. It was whether he could trust himself to love anyone without the fear of abandonment destroying everything. And beneath all of it was Marcus, his son who had already lost one mother figure and didn't deserve to lose another. If Connor let Kaisa into their lives and it fell apart, who would pay the price? The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. Connor was sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at nothing, when Marcus came downstairs. His son stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him with that perceptive gaze. "You're thinking about Kaisa," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Connor didn't bother denying it. Marcus sat down across from him. "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Always." His son folded his hands on the table, looking older than his 15 years. "When I was little, I used to watch you. The way you took care of everything alone. The way you never complained, never asked for help. I thought that's what being a man meant. Being strong. Being alone." Connor felt something tighten in his chest. "But I'm older now," Marcus continued, "and I see things differently. You're not strong because you're alone, Dad. You're just alone. And I don't want to grow up thinking that's the only way to live." The words shattered something inside Connor, a wall he hadn't even known he was still building. "If you push Kaisa away because you're scared," Marcus said quietly, "you're not protecting me. You're teaching me that happiness isn't worth fighting for. Is that really what you want me to learn?" Connor couldn't speak. His son had just articulated the fear he had never been able to name, the pattern he had been repeating without understanding. That night he called Kaisa. "I think we need some time apart," he said, his voice hollow. "I'm not ready for this. I don't know if I'll ever be." Kaisa was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but he could hear the pain beneath it. "I understand. And I want you to know this time the choice is yours. I won't disappear. I'll be here if you change your mind." She hung up, and Connor sat in the darkness of his kitchen, feeling like he had just closed a door that might never open again. A month passed. Kaisa returned to her routine. Patience in the morning, paperwork in the afternoon, empty evenings in her apartment. She had built this life after David's death piece by piece, and she knew how to survive within its walls. But something had changed. In the quiet hours when the work was done and there was nothing left to distract her, she found herself replaying every moment with Connor. Not just the recent weeks, but the years before. The coffee shop in Chicago. The way he used to look at her like she was the only person in the room. The night she walked away. She had told herself for 20 years that she made the right choice. That sacrificing their relationship had freed him to be the man his family needed. But sitting alone in her living room, she finally allowed herself to ask the question she had been avoiding. Had she been protecting him, or had she been protecting herself? The truth settled over her like a weight. She had been afraid that if she stayed, he would resent her. Afraid that his love would turn to bitterness. Afraid that she wasn't enough to make him choose her over everything else. So she had made the choice for him. Not to save him from pain, but to save herself from rejection. And in doing so, she had taken away his voice, his agency, his right to decide his own future. Now he had made his choice. He had asked for space, and she had promised to respect it. This time she would not run. She would not disappear. She would wait, and whatever happened next, she would accept it. Connor went through the motions of living. He woke up, went to work, came home, made dinner for Marcus. The routine that had sustained him for 12 years continued without interruption. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, everything was different. He thought about Kaisa constantly. Not just the woman she was now, but the girl she had been. The way she used to believe in him when he couldn't believe in himself. The way she had looked at him on that restaurant night like she was seeing someone worth knowing. And he thought about what she had told him. The sacrifice she had made, the choice she had taken from him. He had been angry at first, a slow burning rage that surprised him with its intensity. 20 years of believing he was unworthy, and it had all been based on a lie. But as the weeks passed, the anger faded into something more complicated. Because he realized with growing clarity that he was doing exactly what she had done. He had pushed Kaisa away for Marcus. He had told himself he was protecting his son from disappointment, from attachment, from loss. But Marcus had never asked for that protection. Marcus had stood in front of him and said he wanted his father to be happy. Connor wasn't protecting Marcus. He was protecting himself. He was so terrified of being abandoned again that he had abandoned first. One night, unable to sleep, he found himself looking through old boxes in the closet. Photographs, letters, memories he had packed away and forgotten. Near the bottom, he found a picture of himself at 22, standing in front of the university building in Chicago, eyes bright with possibility. He remembered that young man. The one who dreamed of designing buildings, of creating something lasting. The one who believed love was worth fighting for. Where had that person gone? Connor stared at the photograph for a long time. Then he thought about Marcus, about the lesson he was teaching his son. If he spent his whole life running from love because he was afraid of losing it, what would Marcus learn? That happiness was too dangerous to pursue, that the safest way to live was alone. He couldn't do that to his son, and he couldn't do it to himself anymore. Connor showed up at Kaisa's door on a Saturday afternoon without warning, without a plan. She opened the door and stood there, surprise flickering across her face before settling into something cautious and hopeful. "Can I come in?" he asked. She stepped aside. Her apartment was small and warm, filled with books and soft lighting. Connor sat on the couch and Kaisa sat across from him, waiting. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about what you told me, about why you left." Kaisa nodded but didn't speak. "I was angry. For a long time I was so angry. You took away my choice. You decided my future without asking me." Her eyes glistened, but she held his gaze. "But then I realized something." Connor leaned forward, his voice rough. I've been doing the same thing. My whole life I've been making choices for other people without giving them a say. I told myself I was being strong, being protective. But really, I was just scared. He took a breath, steadying himself. When I pushed you away last month, I said it was for Marcus. I said I wasn't ready, that I might never be. But that was a lie. Marcus doesn't need me to be alone. He needs me to show him that happiness is worth fighting for, even when it's terrifying. Kaisa's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. You made a mistake 20 years ago, Connor continued. You made a choice that wasn't yours to make, but I understand why you did it. You were scared just like I've been scared, and I can't punish you for something I've been doing my whole life. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. I don't know what the future looks like. I can't promise it will be easy, but I know I don't want to spend another 20 years wondering what might have been. Kaisa's voice was barely above a whisper. What are you saying? I'm saying I choose you. Not because of who we were. Because of who we are now. Because when I'm with you, I feel like the person I was supposed to become. A tear slipped down Kaisa's cheek. She squeezed his hand tightly. I need you to know something, she said. I'm not going to disappear again. Whatever happens, whatever challenges we face, I'm staying. You have my word. Connor felt something shift inside him, a door opening that had been locked for decades. Then let's start over, he said, not pretending the past didn't happen, but building something new from everything we've learned. Kaisa smiled through her tears, and for the first time in 20 years, Connor allowed himself to believe that love didn't have to end in loss. 6 months later, the kitchen in Connor's house was filled with the smell of roasted chicken and the sound of conversation. Marcus sat at the table telling a story about his basketball coach that had Kaisa laughing so hard she nearly choked on her water. Connor stood at the counter watching them, still amazed that this was his life now. It hadn't been a straight path to get here. There had been difficult conversations, moments of doubt, old wounds that resurfaced when they least expected it. But they had faced each one together with honesty and patience, and a commitment to doing things differently this time. Kaisa had become a regular presence in their home, not replacing anyone, not trying to be something she wasn't. Just being herself, fitting into the spaces that had been empty for so long. Dad, are you going to stand there all night or actually eat? Marcus called out. Connor carried the serving dish to the table and sat down. The three of them ate together, talking about ordinary things, schoolwork, weekend plans. Nothing dramatic, nothing extraordinary. But to Connor, it felt like a miracle. After dinner, Kaisa helped him wash the dishes while Marcus headed upstairs to finish homework. They stood side by side at the sink, working in comfortable silence. Thank you, Connor said quietly. Kaisa looked at him. For what? For being here, for giving me another chance. She dried her hands and turned to face him fully. Thank you for taking it. Marcus appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. I'm going to study at Tyler's house for a couple hours. That okay? Connor nodded. Be back by 9. Marcus started to leave, then stopped. He looked at Kaisa with an expression that was part teenager, part something much older. Kaisa. Yes. Thanks for staying. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything Marcus had witnessed over the past months. His father learning to open up. A woman who kept her promise. A family being built from broken pieces. Kaisa smiled softly. Thanks for letting me. Marcus nodded once, then disappeared out the door. Connor and Kaisa stood in the quiet kitchen, the evening light fading through the windows. He's a good kid, Kaisa said. He's better than I deserve. Kaisa shook her head. No, he's exactly what you deserve. You both are. Connor looked at the woman standing in his kitchen, the woman who had once been his first love and was now becoming something new. Not a replacement for the past, but a bridge to the future. He didn't say, I love you, not yet. Some words needed more time. Instead, he said, "Thank you for letting me choose." And Kaisa, understanding everything that sentence contained, replied, "Thank you for choosing." Outside, the last light of day faded into evening. Inside, two people who had spent 20 years apart stood together in a small kitchen building, something that didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be real. Some people believe that first love is just a chapter we close and move on from. But maybe for some of us, it's a story that was never really finished. Have you ever reconnected with someone from your past? Or maybe there's someone you've thought about over the years wondering what might have been. I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below.